Today, I'm trying something kind of new. I'm going to use the same reference photo to create a number of different self-portraits. From pretty realistic to barely recognizable. I have been interested in diving into blending realism and caricatures for quite a while, but this is the first video I'm doing on the subject. Welcome to everyone, I am Baru. Happy to meet you. If you're new here, welcome. Leave me a note letting me know that you stopped by. On this channel, I'm trying to find the intersection of art, creativity, fun, and community, and occasionally rabbits, snails, and isopods. It's a lot of paths to intersect, and sometimes we hit the mark, and others maybe not so much. It's been a while since I've done people as the focus of my art, and a friend of mine, Melissa Martin, had a video recently of a series of self-portraits, more than 100 of them I think, and I was inspired to do something similar. Now that's a long-term project that I will put out there sometime, but as I was doing these self-portraits recently, I also recalled that I wanted to do some work on caricatures. Not really like the street artist super silly caricatures, but more exaggerating features without getting overly cartoony. By the way, I will link to Melissa's channel and her self-portrait video in the description. I found it very inspiring and maybe you will too. Check it out. Now, I started this caricature project in a way that made sense to me. To do a fairly realistic self-portrait first, based on the reference photo. I wanted to take an online course on this sort of caricature drawing, but I didn't. So I'm guessing here what will work out best. I've done a number of videos on drawing and coloring, and this is one of my more realistic ones that I'm doing right here. So I'm just gonna not talk a lot about how I'm using colored pencils. I'm gonna go on a little bit of a tangent just for a minute so that you can see a little bit behind the curtain here at the Baru Art World headquarters. So, tangent begin. I love taking courses on just about anything. Now, here are a few of the courses I've taken over the years, pretty recently. Beginner watercolors, making wooden marionettes, how to identify the origin of hand-knotted Oriental and Persian rugs, and I even had a course on caricatures in watercolor picked out, even purchased. But around this same time, my computer started, well, actually didn't start. It continued precipitously to approach being completely obsolete. Oh man. The first thing I noticed to go away was the ability to stream Netflix. I cannot do it with the computer chip that I have. Then Domestika went away, and that's where I get a lot of my art classes. Now, fortunately, YouTube still works, but if someday I just completely disappear from the channel, it's probably that. Oh man. Sure, yeah, I could buy a new computer, and I will, but here's why I delay. I bought the entire Adobe suite of applications many years ago. Photoshop and Illustrator, I still use all the time. But if I upgrade my computer, I won't be able to run my purchased Adobe software because it won't run on the newer chips. And Adobe now asks for a subscription, a monthly subscription. Oh my goodness, yeah. I'm thinking kind of no on that. I'm a serious hobbyist, not a full-time graphic designer, at least not anymore. On the other hand, this dated software that I use also requires me to use an older iPhone for recording video. So I'm using an iPhone 6 to be exact. So I've really painted myself into a corner with technology. Where was I going with this? Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, guessing. So I'm guessing how to do this and the best approach for learning how to do these caricatures. It seems like I should do the realistic approach first, kind of learn how to do it the proper way, and then I'll distort it. Yeah, I think it was Picasso, I think he said to learn the rules. Was it like a pro, like a professional? And then you can break the rules like an artist. So kind of know the proper way to do it, and then ignore the proper way and do something interesting with it. So here's my so-called realistic take of the reference. I wouldn't say it's photorealistic, but it's not a bad representation. And through that process, I was noting the actual shape of my face, the proportions, and all that. And from here, I can exaggerate some things in other drawings. I just love these Colorase pencils for sketching. Just wanted to throw that in there because they're, they have really great colors, but they also erase so well. And when you use these with watercolors, sometimes they will kind of spread out a little bit, and I just love the way that happens. So anyway, that was just another aside. One thing I knew I was going to run into is that my face is, well, pretty average overall, proportionally. So it's hard to find things to exploit. And when I say average, I mean I have the sort of face that looks like a lot of other faces. I get approached quite often because I look like someone's cousin's boyfriend or something. Or, man, you're going to learn a lot about me in this video. I'm pretty approachable in real life because I smile a lot probably, and I just have kind of that sort of face. You wouldn't know it from the reference photo that we're using today. But I think people feel comfortable saying, gosh, you look like whoever. And I have heard so many things over the years. Michael J. Fox, Lyle Lovett was one, which I thought was funny. Ryan Seacrest, Huey Lewis. And the other week, I was stopped in the grocery store as I was perusing the soy sauce, and he said, "Hey, you look like that mean chef on TV." So yeah, I've got one of those pretty everyday faces. I think the most identifiable features are, well, my hair. It's kind of spiky, which leads to a slightly elongated forehead, a la Jeff Winger from Community. And my eyes, which are maybe a bit narrower and softer than usual. I'm actually really, really curious if you see something else, though. Like, it's hard for me because I see my own face all the time from all different angles, and sometimes it's easier to see differences if you aren't as familiar with all that. So if you think, holy cow, those ears are tiny. Why does he have 3 nostrils? Well, if you notice anything like that, do let me know. So anyway, I decided with this one, I'm going to exaggerate the forehead and then kind of play up the sad eyes sort of look a bit. Those seem like the 2 most easily exploitable things that I could exaggerate and have it still kind of look like me. And I can't help it. I'm going to make the nose and ears a little bit bigger too because I just like it that way. Okay. And because I skipped this earlier, I'll talk a little bit about how I'm using my colors here. I did use the color erase for the basic sketch, but for the main coloring of this piece, I'm using Prismacolor Premier pencils. When I'm doing faces, I usually start out in one of two ways. In one way, I'll block in the entire area with a light wash of some color, and honestly, this can be so random sometimes. Like for my realistic portrait from a few minutes ago, I used a yellow-green to start. Certainly not a typical color for portraits, but here's what I find, that the colors we choose do not really matter nearly as much as the value of the colors we choose. So how dark or how light it's going to be. That makes 95% of the difference. So the other way that I will normally start these portraits is how I'm doing this one here. Blocking in the shadows, the dark areas. When you do this, the form of the face will start to come to life pretty quickly, and you can see the shape because there are clear areas of light and shadow. So if your reference photo doesn't have pretty defined light and shadow areas, it's going to be tougher, and you might find that you even need to invent those things. Lots of supermodels and magazines, the photography is often very, very well lit from all directions, which eliminates a lot of the shadows. And that's great if you want to hide imperfections and highlight the clothes or whatever, but it's a lot tougher to make a good portrait out of those sorts of pictures. So that's one thing I would do before spending a lot of time on drawing a face. Get a good reference photo. Nicely defined shadows and a good mix of midtones. And from there, after blocking in the major areas, if I'm using pencils, I will usually count on going back and forth a number of times between warm colors and cool colors, building up kind of slowly, and I'll avoid those heavy lines where I'm pressing really hard to get those darker shadows until I'm pretty sure I'm ready to nail those things down. And because I approach things this way in a slow layering method, I rarely have to use an eraser. Maybe I'll use it at the end for specific highlights, for instance, but rarely will I erase, a whole side of the face, for instance. But those heavier lines near the end will help to define the details and add some punch where it's needed. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next drawing. I did leave this drawing a bit lighter and softer than I normally would on a drawing like this, of this type. A lot of that decision came from the quality and texture of the paper, which honestly isn't as friendly to large areas of heavy pencil use. So I'm not 100% sold on that quality of this drawing, but as a caricature, I think it works fairly well. I probably shouldn't have messed with the nose and the ears, but I think it still captures the essence of me. Sad, sad looking me. On this last drawing, I decided I wanted to go a bit further still, and probably too far to continue to look like me in retrospect. I decided that I wanted to do a little bit more emphasis on the chin and the nose. Actually, the nose is the focus of this one, and I can't tell you why. It was just something that I wanted to do. You can see that I drew the nose already kind of big here in the sketch, and I didn't think it was quite big enough, so I made it bigger. So, yeah, there we go. A big bulbous nose. I think this is because the nose and the ears are great places to add color, and it can add a lot of personality. I also tend to go a little bit off script with hair color. I'll typically add lots and lots of colors to the hair. In fact, I'll pretty much use any of the colors that I'm using for the rest of the drawing in there. And if you've seen my circulism videos, you know that you can add all sorts of colors and then kind of nudge those colors closer to what you want by maybe even using complementary opposites or something else. And you can do this also with the skin, but I think that you have to be a little bit more careful if you're trying to go with a, like a realistic look. You can't stray too far from what's expected. Still, I'll often use yellows and greens and blues that you might not expect on the skin, but maybe just as an undertone. And this will just add some depth and interest to the drawing. Obviously, if you're going for an absolute realism, your choices will be, completely different. But I like a little bit of, just something, In the final version of this drawing, you can see how I really emphasize the nose with that bold red and magenta, and I only use that very sparingly elsewhere, so that little localized splash of color really pops out. And something I wouldn't always do on something like this is to outline the face. If you're going for a more realistic look, there aren't lines on the face, it's just changes in value. But this face wasn't really pulling away from the background because of a softer edge, so I went along the contour of the face with an orange color. Not super noticeable, but enough that the cheeks and the forehead are now clearly defined. I did a similar thing on the other side with a turquoise blue. I think I strayed too far from the reference photo in this, in the wrong places, in order for it to be a successful caricature. I guess it just doesn't capture me. But I like the drawing. The colors and shapes are interesting, I think. The guy would probably be stopped in the grocery store being told he looks like someone. But who? I don't know. Here are most of the drawings that I did for this project. What do you think? What do you like or dislike? I'd love to know. And thank you so much for tagging along for this video, and if you feel so inclined, maybe give this video a like, leave a comment, subscribe. I'd really love that. And next week I'll have another video for you, so make sure to check back. And until then, well, have a nice day, a nice week, and see you later. Bye-bye.